is really interesting to be feeling a lot of the things now that I couldn't recognize, appreciate, or give space for that you were feeling 2 years ago. And I know that others who are listening have felt the same thing, whether you've been in that place, whether you've been in your place or in my place or in my family's place or wherever. I know a lot of people have felt these same things. And yeah, loneliness is, I think you've said that loneliness has been...
It's the worst feeling in the world.
It's the worst feeling in the world. Yeah, that's what you've said. So,
right, because humans are wired for connection and community and belonging.
Right, the whole statement, it takes a village to raise a child. It just speaks to our need for community. It's not so much that you need to have more than one or two people to raise a child. It's that we need community.
We need to belong within community. And my exodus out of the church threatened your belonging.
Yeah. Yeah, because to truly belong, I have to be able to be authentic and accepted for my authentic self in that group, whatever group it is. In this case, we're talking about my family. And it's difficult even to have the conversations that would decide whether or not I belong, because they're so scared of the fact that I'm considering leaving the church or have left the church. I don't even know what they think at this point in time for some of them. Obviously, I'm anti-Mormon because we're doing this podcast. And so it's difficult to even to have the difficult conversations, and that's lonely as well.
That sounds like many of your fears of being abandoned by your family have been realized.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of judgment there too. I'm just actually kind of looking at this, some of the core emotions that I'm feeling are fear, which I've talked about. And then some of the core emotions that I feel like they're feeling, whether or not I'm accurate, of course, because I don't know, but one of those is disgust. And if you track disgust, it goes to judgment. And the problem with judgment is it's so very often ignorant. We're making judgments, but we don't really understand someone. Right.
But as you look at your family, what is leading them to judge you? What emotion is it that is most likely, that they are most likely experiencing, where judgment is how they protect themselves?
Fear, for sure. I don't know if there's something more deep than that, because I'm one of those emotionally illiterate people.
But hang on a second. Isn't it interesting that you are scared? They are scared. Is it fair to say that fear is actually what's getting in the way of connection?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without question. It was the same way with you and me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even before all this stuff, the reason that we struggled with emotional connection, there was a lot of fear there, partly because, again, of my fear of being hurt, of, I'll get more vulnerable here for a second. You talked about the struggle that you were having when we were seeing Robin because of Abby. We had adopted Abby. Well, before Abby, and what led to this problem was that we were in the process of adopting twins. They had been born. They were in the NICU. You went and you basically stayed by their side for 6 days with the understanding that you were going to be able to adopt them.
Right.
I came with the kids and met them as well.
We were actually in the process of getting the insurance approval to have the girls transported from Philadelphia to North Carolina so that I could be home, because we knew they were born so premature. We knew that they would be in the NICU for a prolonged period of time. Like, we were in the process.
We were deep in this process. Yeah. Mom was very much in favor of us taking them, and we thought Dad was too in that. And then Dad, being the deadbeat that he was, and I know that's judgmental, but that's the way that I felt about
Right,
the
Dad
situation,
changed his
decided he
mind.
wasn't going to do it. And part of that was, part of my judgment, him being a deadbeat, is that he didn't take the girls.
Right. He
They
did.
just
He
ended up in
denied the
foster system.
adoption. He denied the adoption and didn't take care of them.
And didn't take them, yeah.
So they ended up in the foster system.
Right. So there was that. And I think that both of us have probably tracked our emotional struggles really to that point. And maybe there's other things involved too, but that was at least one of the big things, because you were devastated. You had spent 6 days with these girls. You loved these girls already as if they were yours, as if you'd had them for 10 years, not just 6 days.
They were my babies.
They were yours.
They are my babies.
I came and I met them, had the other kids with us, and then I had to go home, and I've always put up walls anyway. There was no way I was falling for these girls until they were in my home. For better or for worse, it saved me a lot of pain at the time, but it also prevented me from recognizing just how hurting you were, how devastated you were, and I was unable to connect with you because I couldn't see it. And
what was it? So with that idea of let's stick with the feelings, what was it like for you to watch me grieve in that way?
I didn't understand. And because I didn't understand, I revert to this idea: how is this going to help me? How is grieving over these girls who weren't technically quote unquote ours yet, how is this going to help me? And I didn't understand that that's not where you were. And I'll regret that forever, because I should have known better, but I just didn't. I didn't have the tools. You
couldn't do what you didn't know
Right.
how to do. And I think it's so important for our listeners to hear that, you and I grieved the loss of our twins very differently and still do.
Yeah.
Absolutely still do. That when I left the church, I felt liberated and free. And as you're struggling, you're feeling trapped and held back. And so it's really common for us to have similar life experiences, but have a different emotional response, a different emotional expression. And this is why it's so important to recognize that you need to have somebody, you need to find those people. And if you can't find somebody to have a relationship with, seek help, seek a coach, seek a counselor. And if you don't connect with them, fire them and get another one. Like, I want our listeners to be actively engaged in finding somebody that you can be vulnerable in this way with, somebody who's going to hold space for you, because this heals.
Yeah.
But also recognize that just because you and I have a similar lived experience doesn't mean that we experience that in the same way. This is where we get into my truth versus your truth, or, the subjective experiential truths. Ours are different. We both lost twins that day.
Yeah.
We both lost a lot of money that day.
Yeah.
Over the course of the next several years, we battled the system to bring them home, and we were denied because the judge was traumatized.
Yeah.
And was unable to make a decision. I had a hard time for a long time holding space for the trauma that judge had experienced that stopped him from being able to take action and protect our, at that point, surviving twin and older sister. But again, there was an emotional experience connected with that needed to be healed.
Yeah, one of the most important things that I've learned in this journey, of course, came from Brene Brown, right?
Right. Yes, we're big Brene fans here. If you haven't noticed, you haven't been listening.
She talks about compassion, and one of the most important things that I learned, and this is what she says, is compassion is knowing our darkness well enough that we can sit in the dark with others. It is never a relationship between the wounded and the healed. It is a relationship between equals. And I think that my entire life, it's not that I've been afraid of emotion. It's that you had to come to me. If you needed emotional support, I was willing to offer it. I don't feel like I intentionally rebuffed your need for emotional support. I probably did on occasion, but it wasn't intentional. If you came to me saying, hey, I need emotional support, I need a hug, I need more than that, I was usually willing to offer that, but you had to come to me. And compassion, and if you think of this from the background of Christianity, in the Book of Mormon, when Jesus is about to leave after visiting the Nephites, he says, my bowels are filled with compassion. It's being able to just be with someone as they hurt. And I'm not very good at that still, but there's a capacity that's growing. And I think but it's hard. It's you essentially,
right.
You end up hurting with someone. It's almost like you're inviting pain into your life so that you can be with someone in their pain.
Right.
And you have to be in a place to do that. And
you're talking about practicing feeling shit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for someone like me who has grown up basically avoiding the pain, it's a very difficult change.
Well, and let me frame it this way, and please correct me if I'm wrong. And that is, you grew up in an environment, as did I. Like, this is not Mason family bashing. I grew up in the same environment, that if you were emotional, you were less than. Just like as we said before, if a man demonstrated emotions, he was feminine-like, therefore he was less than. And so in a way, as we try and stop ourselves from experiencing our own emotion, as we avoid sitting with people in their darkness and empathizing with them, you are elevating yourself above them, almost like, I don't want to step into the raging river because I'll drown, but also I'm better than that. There's this sense of, if I step down, I lose value. I'm less than. And really
or
what
I'm
happens...
going to get dirty too. Or,
right.
Yeah.
And really what happens is that when we step into somebody's darkness with them, we gain connection, we gain belonging, and we become stronger, truly stronger, because our brain learns that it's safe to be vulnerable when certain pieces are there. Like, I'm not going to go into a family home evening with your family, Mason, and express my deepest emotions. If I do that, I will be dehumanized not because they're assholes. They've acted that way for sure at times, but that's not who they are, but because they are protecting themselves from feeling, because if they feel, they might be less than. And they disconnect from the wounded. And if you hold a spiritual belief, if you're amongst the Christian faith, The Savior did not wait for people to come to him.
Right.
He went to them. He sat in the darkness, and he didn't necessarily demand a whole lot of them either. It was, I'm here to heal with you, be a part of that journey. And if you never follow me again, I don't care. That part doesn't matter. We don't have to agree. You don't have to change your entire life to feel my love for you. Here I am. And so as we come to a close today, number one, Mason, I think that you did a really good job of staying with the emotions today and trusting me as I was like, wait, don't get into the story. Come back to that emotion and really dig in. I hope that our listener is able to recognize that this was an opportunity to model a lot of different ways of having a conversation emotionally. And of course, I did not do this perfect as a wife, as a therapist, but I want you to identify the elements of identifying the emotion and then trying to take that emotion a little bit deeper so that you gain deeper understanding. So with Mason, he talks about we started with, I don't want people to be disappointed in me, and took that all the way down to feelings of abandonment and losing his voice within his family of origin and his community. So becoming less valuable within your community. That's how we went from disappointment to really the nitty gritty, those itty bitty roots on a plant. Like we've got that main root, and then we're exploring all the little offshoots of where those go so that we can heal those emotional wounds or address them or take that data and utilize it differently. What I did as the, therapizing or the wife or the listener role, really at the end of the day, I was the listener role, was that I told you that sounds lonely, that feels scary. I deepened that emotions by listening to you. I stayed in that emotional place. I didn't come out and offer you advice. I validated, Mason, when you said, yeah, Sarah, you say loneliness is the worst thing in the world. I was like, yeah, it is, because we're wired for connection. And then I took that right back into Mason's feeling. Was this realized? How was this realized? So we were really focusing and keeping the focus on Mason, on Mason's experiences, on Mason's emotions, without solving those problems. Like, Mason, do you feel like I offered any solutions for your emotional experiences in that moment?
No, doggone it. Let's get some solutions.
Right. Because
No.
Fix It Felix is the very last stage. Because when I get to the place, Mason, do you feel like I understood you today?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want my advice, or did you just need to talk to me about your feelings today?
Today, I just needed to talk. Yeah, there's one other piece.
Hang on.
Okay.
Because you said I just needed to talk, or in the Gottmans, this would be the worksheet that we worked is stress reducing conversations, which is it's that one-sided conversation. And because you say I just needed to vent, Fix It Felix doesn't come out. He stays away because you have identified, I don't need Sarah to fix it. I just needed to be heard. I just needed to be seen. I just needed to be reassured. And so in your own relationships, this would be an opportunity to say, do you want a hug? Do you need some time alone? How can I be of moral support to you? Honor that. And then the conversation is not necessarily over. It's not like you change the subject, but Fix It Felix stays gone until the speaker, in this case Mason, asks for advice.
Right. What do you think I should do? Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
There's one other thing, the last piece of this, when Brene Brown talks about compassion, she also says the tendency is to flip on the lights and say everything's okay. Mm-hmm. Compassion sits in the dark and just feels with someone. And the reason that I bring that up is because that really hits home for me. That is my tendency. And it's not because I want to devalue what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. It's simply that, how is this helping me? Let's get up. Let's move on. the typical Mormon, put the shoulder to the wheel, right? Let's
There's
drive on.
right. God is giving you trials to make you stronger.
Right.
God has your back. Those are very minimizing. It's the phenomenon of grief. Like, I cannot even count how many clients that I've had who have lost somebody close to them or an animal close to them. So, mother, father, sibling, spouse, child, whomever.
Dog, cat.
And almost always the most hated phrase is, they're in a better place now. It's supposed to be a comforting thing, but it minimizes and shuts up the expression of that painful, longing, devastated, I miss you. Even if the person that you're losing, if the death was expected and they're 85, 86, 25, 25 million years old, if the person that is getting ready to pass as a dinosaur, they're in a better place, they're not hurting anymore. Those end up shutting down
the feeling
the
process.
impact of the person in grief misses them, that there's a hole in their heart, that there's no way to fill that hole. When I look at what happened with the twins, for me, people would tell me all the time, it must not have been God's will that they were yours, or I guess it just wasn't meant to be, or trust God, there's always another child. And I'm like, I have a hole in my heart that is never going to be filled again. Don't take my hole away from me, because if you try and take that hole from me, then the lives that were supposed to be mine, that pain, that love is not honored. And what I really need, and what one of my closest friends, Laura, was able to do, was sit with me and really connect with the fact that I had lost 2 children who I had loved from the minute we were matched with their birth mother. And for me, those children, I loved them as if they came out of my own body. Like, there is no difference for me. If you are a child in my home, it is as if you came out of my body. And the judge says it in the court order, and it's put on the birth certificate. Go ahead, Mace.
For a long time, I wanted to be the person that pulled you out of the dark, because I thought that's what was better. And saying something like they're in a better place might be helpful at the right time, but it's not helpful. It's oftentimes more hurtful if it comes too early. But what I want to be now is not the person that pulls you out of the dark, but the one that can walk with you out of the dark when you're ready for that, when the time is right. I want to be able to sit with you and just feel. And then if the time comes, which I would imagine in most situations the time will come where you're ready to walk out of the dark, I want to be able to hold your hand and walk out with you. Having been able to feel with you in your deepest, darkest moments.
Yeah. I want to say that when you have that, I want to pull you out of the dark, usually that's because the person in the quote unquote light is uncomfortable
that's totally
with how
what
the
it was.
dark is affecting me.
Totally what it was for me.
And
I don't want to sit in the dark.
And I would say that withhold they're in a better place until the person who experienced the loss says it. Yeah. Because until they say it, until it's what they feel, it's not our place to take that pain away from them. I can speak from personal experience that nobody was allowed to touch that pain. I was protecting that pain. And I needed to protect that pain.
Yeah.
And that pain is still there. That I mean, my one of my twins and the older sister is still alive. And when I see pictures, because I'm still in contact with birth mom,
right?
They're still my girls. And when I see pictures, my heart hurts. There is still darkness. There will always be darkness. I've just learned how to thrive in the darkness. The pain doesn't go away. I learn how to carry it. And that's truly what happens with grief. And that's truly the goal that we want to achieve, is that I am safe for you. I will help you carry this emotion without judgment. And it can be there for as long as it needs to be there until you have learned how to navigate life with these feelings here. Keep in mind, listener, that when we don't address those feelings, they fester, they become toxic, and they will impact your overall wellness. In our physical health, we see this as a lot of times cardiovascular disease, immunocompromised autoimmune disorders. We see that.
There's physiological
Yeah,
symptoms.
you get those physiological symptoms. We're going to see this in your spirituality, your ability to connect with others. In all areas of your wellness, this can impact you. So my encouragement is sit with those emotions, lean in. Your brain has not learned how to do that from the time you were little, so it doesn't feel natural. But as you practice it, as you get more comfortable with it, it becomes more natural. And what you will find is that you are more at peace in almost every aspect, if not every aspect of your life, as you get comfortable leaning in and connecting with others in emotions. If this is something that's beyond your capacity, get help. There is help in so many places. And don't be afraid to say, you know what? You're not a good fit for my vulnerability, and search elsewhere. A good provider, a good therapist, a good life coach is going to help you find a connection when they aren't that person.